What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and Brian Dable. Sunday morning, little breakfast with Abdul Carter. We got to talk about it. And Abdul Carter also coming into the Giants facilities on Thursday for a private top 30 visit with the New York Giants. Very exciting stuff here. Obviously, the Giants are narrowing down their first-round draft list. They've pretty much got it down to three candidates now. It's Travis Hunter, it's Abdul Carter, or it's Shedeur Sanders. And according to the reports, they're leaning more towards the Carter/Hunter route. Obviously, it's contingent on what the two teams in front of them do. We pretty much know for sure that the Titans are taking Cam Ward. But what about the Cleveland Browns? Are they taking Carter or Hunter? And then do the Giants just decide to take whichever one the Browns don't take? That's obviously going to be part of this discussion. But we also really just want to talk about Abdul Carter, the pros and cons of drafting him. Where would he fit in the New York Giants defense that already has two starting edge rushers? Does one of them get the boot and gets traded, or do they just find a way to get all three of those guys on the field at the same time? Of course, that's going to be part of the conversation. And then we're going to dive into the live chat. We see all of you who are in here. What's up, Kane and Zero? What's up, Hours in Silence, Rescue Ops? Appreciate everybody who's tuning in right now. We're going to get you all involved in the conversation as well. But initially, starting out here with Abdul Carter. Alex, how are you feeling today, my friend? What are your thoughts on Brian Dable going out of his way to personally have breakfast with Abdul Carter in advance of the Giants meeting with the prospect?
Yeah, man, I'm doing pretty good. And everyone in the chat, how is it going? Drop what's up in the chat. Obviously, going to be here for about an hour, I would imagine. Usually that's kind of how we go about it these days. But Abdul Carter, Brian Dable, little breakfast date, trying to get to know each other. And Dable, obviously, in a situation where if it's up to Dable, he's going to want a player that's going to help him win now. You know what I mean? If you draft Sanders, he's probably sitting behind Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson, learning, gathering intel, hopefully improving behind the scenes and then taking over. But he's not directly impacting 2025. And, Anthony, you and I are on the same page here. One of the few things that we are on the same page about at times, that the Giants need to win games now, right? When it comes to Brian Dable, Joe Shane, they don't have time to waste. They have to draft a player who is going to help them win football games immediately. Now, we both love Travis Hunter, and if he's there at 3, I am sprinting to the podium to draft that player because he has that level of upside. However, am I going to be upset with Abdul Carter? Absolutely not. Now, let's talk about his injuries. A lot of people, every time I tweet about him, every time I mention him, well, he's got a foot injury and he has a shoulder injury. Is he, what's going on there? So the shoulder injury he suffered during the playoffs, I believe, and he's rehabbing it still. That's why he's not working out. But he expects to be ready to go 100%. Nothing wrong there for the start of training camp. And the stress fracture in his foot, you have to remember, this guy's 21 years old. Stress fractures in your foot, at least after doing some research, suggests that most athletes have a 100% recovery. So I'm not concerned about the foot. I'm not concerned about the shoulder. These are issues that I don't see as necessarily a problem. If they were problems, I don't think he would be considered a third overall pick, Anthony. If these were legitimate injuries, and we saw what happened to Azeez Ojulari when there were risks about his knee, and by the way, yes, he's injury prone, but they're not because of his knee. He slipped all the way to, what was it, 51 or 53, something like that. If there were legitimate issues with Abdul Carter, we would know because he would be sliding down draft boards right now because of it. If it happens on draft day, we will know they are serious problems. But for now, clearly NFL teams don't see it that way. And clearly he's going to be a top 3 pick. And listen, if the Giants draft him at 3, you now have one of the most dynamic young pass rush duos. We'll talk about what happens with Thibodeaux in this instance, but Abdul Carter and Brian Burns are one of the best duos, pass rush duos in the league immediately. And you're not even mentioning Dexter Lawrence just yet. What you have there could be absolutely insane. And in the NFC East, where you have mobile quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels, and even Dak can move a little bit, you need to have elite edge presences. You need to be able to rush the passer. If you just go watch Abdul Carter, man, he is 1 year of true pass rush, 1 year of actually playing as a pass rusher for a full season. And he looks so advanced and so developed and so strong and so quick. His snap off the ball is instantaneous. His get up is unbelievable. And his strength, his size is incredible. Everything you want in a pass rusher, Abdul Carter is just bleeding with potential, just gushing with potential. So, looking at this situation, Anthony, what do you think about the injuries? Are they a concern to you? And what do you think about the idea of pairing Brian Burns with a guy like Carter who has all pro upside?
Yeah, I love the idea of pairing those two guys together. And as you mentioned, that you hadn't mentioned Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence is the best pass rusher on the New York Giants. And having an elite interior rusher combined with an elite pass rusher is really how you get some scary moments for a front seven up against an offensive line. I mean, listen, Abdul Carter, I want to speak to the injury thing. If there was concern from teams inside the NFL about the injury, then Abdul Carter would not be canceling his meetings with all of the teams picking outside of the top 4. I'm not sure if you saw that, Alex, but he declined all of his top 30 visits and meetings with any team picking past the 4th overall pick, which is the New England Patriots. He's only meeting with the Titans, the Browns, the Giants, and the Patriots. Everyone else he is not meeting with. So clearly he has gotten some sort of assurances by those 4 teams that at least one of them will take him with their first round selection. So Abdul Carter's going in the top 5. The injury is not a major concern for me. If he were doing workouts on the fractured foot, the stress fractured foot, then yeah, maybe there's cause for concern, but he's not. He's going through the process. He's rehabbing diligently and patiently, and he should be ready for the start of the season. And general manager of the Cleveland Browns, Andrew Berry, also said recently that neither of those injuries give cause for concern for a long-term effect on his career. So Abdul Carter's healthy, not fully healthy right now, but he has no long-term health scares here. And I do think that he's going to be a tremendous player wherever he gets drafted. And it very well could be the New York Giants. Now, speaking to his fit with the New York Giants, the thing that I want to address is where does he fit, right? A lot of fans say, does that mean Kayvon Thibodeaux is going to get traded? Will we use Kayvon Thibodeaux in a trade piece to get up and get our quarterback with our second first-round pick potentially? No, I really don't think so. I think all 3 of those guys would be on the field at the same time for the New York Giants. I think everybody's kind of overcomplicating it. They see that there's 2 starting edge rushers on a team, and they think, okay, well, now we got to get rid of one of those guys. First of all, depth is of the utmost importance. Second of all, having more pass rushers is only better. We are fans of the New York Football Giants, Alex. We watched Super Bowl 42. We watched Super Bowl 46. Those teams didn't have 2 starting edge rushers. They had like 4 starting caliber edge rushers on each of those rosters, whether you're talking about Strahan, Umenyiora, Kiwanuka, Pierre-Paul, Tuck. The edge rusher group for both of those teams just went so deep. And that's what the New York Giants front 7 right now is personally missing to me, is depth on the defensive line. Yes, they have Burns and they have Thibodeaux, but behind them, they just lost Ojulari. Now they have Golston, but he's not a starting caliber player. Dexter Lawrence on the interior. No other starting caliber players on the interior of this defensive line alongside him. But Abdul Carter is a 6'5", 230 or 60-pound beast, whatever. He has the size and the strength. He could play on the edge, which is where he primarily will play. Man can get on the interior as well and rush the passer and is a really good run defender in both regards. Plus, and this is the thing people don't bring up enough, Alex, he started his career as an inside linebacker, playing as an off-ball linebacker, right? So the Giants have every opportunity to get this guy on the field, whether you're talking inside linebacker or outside linebacker as an edge rusher, hand in the ground as an edge rusher, or even on the interior. The guy is that Swiss Army knife from a pass rushing standpoint that Micah Parsons has been for the Dallas Cowboys. Micah Parsons plays on the interior. He plays on the edge. He plays off ball all over the place. So there is always an opportunity to get Abdul Carter on the field, and it shouldn't cut too deeply into the playing time for a guy like Thibodeaux or Burns. And keep in mind, guys, Brian Burns did stay healthy last year, but played through a lot of injuries. We say he stayed healthy because he played all 17 games, but realistically, he was hurt through a lot of those games. He could have used some snaps off. And take into account, Kayvon Thibodeaux did miss games due to injuries, and that wasn't the first time in his career that he missed games due to injuries. Injuries happen, especially in these high contact positions, like in the trenches, on the edge, or in the defensive line. That's why you want more talent there. You want a surplus of talent. You don't want to get rid of the talent that you have to make room for new talent. Stack that talent. That's how you create a great defensive front 7. That's why Abdul Carter to the New York Giants does make sense. And that's why Kayvon Thibodeaux should not prevent them from drafting him or anything like that. So I think that he is a great fit with the Giants, Alex. I want to get your take on that as well. Obviously, I kind of broke it down there many different ways. If you want to get Abdul Carter on the field, you'll be able to get Abdul Carter on the field. Don't overthink it. Get all of your best guys on the field at once and get after the quarterback.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, in a situation where the Giants have spent a lot of money, right, on Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo, they brought in some depth pieces on the defensive line at edge rusher and in the defensive tackle position. And, I know the offense needs help, and I want Travis Hunter, right? That's my 1A. That's the guy I want in this draft class. We just don't know if he's going to be available because, listen, the Browns, they're a wild card right now. They don't have a quarterback on the roster. So, I mean, that's actually capable of starting. And the free agent crop, Anthony, is very bad. It's horrible. You know what I mean? Like there's Joe Flacco left. There's nobody else. Rodgers isn't going there for sure. So what do you do if you're the Browns? Do you take a shot at Shedeur Sanders? Do you trade up or trade back? Or what are you going to do? Are you going to go get Jackson Dart? How are you going to go about the quarterback position? Well, at the very least, you're going to add Hunter to that room, whether it be a DB or a receiver, and you're going to be able to improve your offensive upside, at least tangibly. And listen, Carter and rather Hunter and Neighbors together on offense. And I see somebody in the chat said before that we're overrating Russell Wilson. No one's overrating Russell Wilson here. We understand that he's at the back end of his career. What we are saying is that he's a substantial upgrade over Daniel Jones. And if you disagree with that, I really don't think that you got much base in that claim. Like there's not much logic to suggest that Russell Wilson isn't going to be significantly better than Daniel Jones, because he is going to be. We know we've already broken down all the stats. The deep ball, the percentages are, he had a 54% completion rate on 51 attempts last year. On the deep ball, he had over 800 yards. Daniel Jones had a 24% success rate on balls 20 plus yards downfield. We're talking about a different caliber of player. Brian Daboll wants to take shots downfield. He wants to utilize the speed of Neighbors, utilize the speed of Slayton, and even Hyatt maybe. We're going to see a much different offense this year. Much, much different, much more efficient. Even if it's not high end, we may see an average offense. And guys, I don't think that we actually understand what average looks like anymore. Average is competent, right? We have been so below that, it's not even remotely close. Now you add Hunter to that mix, it's going to be amazing. However, Carter, like you said, Anthony, and look, I'm sold on Carter or Hunter. I'm happy with either of those things. When you said, just to follow up on that, when I said overrated, I mean, y'all thinking we don't need a receiver. Like I said, I really want Hunter with Neighbors at receiver. So if that's the case, like we're on the same page there. But I'm sold on Carter as well if Hunter's gone at 2, because like you said, Anthony, the versatility that Carter gives you, you can put him all over the place, standing up over the center. I saw him do it at Penn State multiple times. You can put him on the edge. You can drop him back. I watched him spy a couple times, delayed blitzes, stunts, everything. He can do it all. And he's so, and it's kind of funny. You could call him underdeveloped because of how raw of a talent he actually is. But because of his speed, his get off speed, his strength and his bend, the upside here is insane. Get this guy into Andre Patterson's, schoolhouse and let him learn. Let him learn from Brian Burns. Let him learn from Dexter Lawrence. That is where you're going to find just an elite level. It's like you said, you call Jackson Dart a ball of clay. I would say the same thing for Abdul Carter. He is a ball of clay. And he's got elite traits of a pass rusher, right? Jackson Dart is missing some traits. But Abdul Carter has all the traits, and he's a ball of clay. You can turn him into anything you want him to be. I fear that Shane Bowen doesn't know how to accomplish that. That's the only pause I have. But even Abdul Carter with that skill set may be too good to fail, even with a suspect defensive coordinator. I've seen him bull rush though. I've seen him rip plenty of moves. But the dip moves work just fine. I don't think you necessarily have to discredit him because he has 1 or 2 elite moves. If he has a couple of elite moves, people build careers on those moves. You know what I mean? People build Hall of Fame careers on 1 or 2 elite moves. That is how it goes as a pass rusher, having a vast array, but a couple that you lean on as your primary staples. So, Anthony, I 100% agree. This is a can't lose selection in Abdul Carter. Travis Hunter's the same way, in my opinion. You can't lose. Either of those 2 guys gives you all pro level potential. They are one of the 2 prospects in this draft class that are blue chippers, and the Giants are going to have one of those 2 guys fall into their lap. You can't pass on them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really tough to pass on those guys. Obviously, the only reason you would is if you desperately need a quarterback. I just don't think the Giants are desperate for a quarterback anymore. Yes, they could use a Shedeur Sanders and a long-term solution at quarterback, but they're not desperate for one anymore. But let's get to the super chat here from Tora Buru. Appreciate it so much. Thank you. If we kick Kayvon inside edge, we draft a DT in the second round, run stopper preferably, and get a Will Howard or so in the third. Thoughts? Yeah, so I don't hate this strategy. Obviously, you're going back-to-back defensive line here, first round. If you're taking Carter, second round, you're drafting a defensive tackle. And then you're finally addressing that quarterback need in the third round with a Will Howard or somebody else. We'll see. I don't think Jalen Milroe is going to land there anymore. Sounds like he might go in the first round now, actually, which we should discuss later on. But yeah, a developmental quarterback in rounds 3 to 5, somewhere in that range. I do like that idea if the Giants aren't going quarterback in the first round. Let's assume, though, it is Carter in the first round. I actually don't think kicking Kayvon inside makes a ton of sense. He has a very, I will say, lean lower body is what how kindly I'll put it, Alex. His legs aren't exactly the most powerful and strong, and he doesn't have the greatest anchor. Those are the things you really need to succeed on the interior of the defensive line. Those are the things I think Carter has, and I think Carter could actually move on the inside better than Kayvon would be able to. But Kayvon in the interior, being that run defense is not necessarily a strength for him, and just strength in general isn't a strength, I don't think that Kayvon makes a ton of sense on the interior. So I do like that strategy, though. Like if the Giants do go with Carter, maybe then you're not going back to the defensive line in the second round. However, there are going to be a lot of impressive second round defensive tackles on the board for the Giants at 34 overall. So I do really like that being the target range for them to land an interior defender is that second round draft pick. I think that makes a lot of sense. Alex, what is your take on this draft strategy that Tora Buru suggests down below in this gracious super chat?
Yeah, appreciate the super chat, man. And listen, kicking Kayvon inside to edge, draft a DT in the second round, run stopper preferably, and get a Will Howard so in the third. I mean, this, whether it be Kayvon staying at where he is, drafting Carter, we'll see what happens here. But just in terms of defensive tackle in the second round, Anthony and I are both on the same page here. We would love that. We would love, because this draft class is stacked with defensive tackles. Now, the counterpoint would be, because there's so many good defensive tackles, do you prefer to wait till the third round to get a guy that could start for you immediately and then use that second round pick on maybe a position that doesn't have all of those, have all that depth, but is maybe more front loaded? And I'll ask you this, Anthony, as kind of like a backup question to it. If this defensive tackle class is so strong and the Giants feel they can get a starter in the third round, do you think it's better practice to go after maybe a weaker position that maybe not be as deep in this draft class in the second round? It could be, I don't know, let's say the Giants don't get a receiver in the first round, or maybe they want to go for a versatile offensive lineman in the second round. Is that something that you would consider because the DT class is so deep?
No, because exactly what you're describing is picking for need. That's how you reach on prospects that do not deserve to be drafted where you're drafting them. When you say, "Oh, we can land this later, but let's reach for this need now because it might be a thinner position," that's when you're taking a prospect that's not actually worth the draft pick that you're investing in them. And that's how you have many draft busts, like taking a Josh Azito in the third round because everybody was saying, "Oh, the guard class is kind of thin. Maybe we can address another position of need at a strength later on." I agree with ETC 7898. We need best player available at every pick. I do agree with that. I really think that this Giants team has a lot of holes and also has a lot of need for depth. So taking best player available is the proper strategy. And I also want to bring up this chat here from Anthony Fittipaldi. Hopefully I said that correctly. "I bet the Giants are taking Rutgers running back. They met with him, and him and Tracy would be great. And you can get Kyle in the 5th round too, but he can complete with Tracy is so good." So I agree with you. I actually think that he's going to be on the Giants draft board. Kyle Monangai, I think is how you say his last name. I really like this prospect. I'm not going to try and say his last name again, so I'm just going to keep referring to him as Kyle, Alex. But Kyle is a powerful running back who's probably available around the 4th, 5th round, which is similar to where the Giants just drafted Tyrone Tracy Jr. And Tyrone Tracy Jr. being a more elusive one-cut running back, good vision, get out in space, make a guy miss, and boom, now he's off to the races. Kyle, on the other hand, this Rutgers running back, being a between the tackles, hand him the ball, let him punch you in the mouth and fall forward for additional yardage. And I think that change of pace, that fire and ice combo could be really solid. So this is a player that I really like for the Giants. We know that Rutgers players attended the local pro day that the Giants had, Kyle included in that. And I do like him a lot as a prospect. So I wanted to shout out this chat and say, I do agree with this. And I really like Kyle Monangai, I think is how you say his last name, out of Rutgers for the Giants.
Yeah, the Giants, they love these private workouts to see, what's going on there. Also a local guy. So they've brought in a lot of Rutgers players over the past couple of seasons. Listen, I really want Cam Scatterbo, man. And I wrote an article about him yesterday, and the reason I want Cam Scatterbo is because you just sometimes don't have to overthink things. The guy is a bruising running back. He is going to run over linebackers. He's going to be maximum effort. He's going to pass protect for you, and he's going to be a receiver in the flat on wheel routes. He's a very underrated receiver. This is a guy that had 1,700 yards this past season. That was just on the ground, let alone I think another 300 plus on the through the air. I really like Scatabo is just I don't really care about the mileage either, because running backs, you run them into the ground and you replace them. That is what the strategy is for running backs these days. I don't think Scatabo is going to go in the early second or maybe the early third. It's possible, but running backs, they tend to drop into the mid rounds. I think he might be there with that 99th overall pick, that extra third round pick that we got. If he was there and we had that extra third round pick, I would definitely consider taking him, because I think he's that good, and he is one of those guys that's just a highlight player, and he's going to do the dirty work for you, and he's going to take a lot of pressure off Tyrone Tracy, who, by the way, Tracy dealt with a couple of injuries last year because we leaned on him so much. We really didn't trust Devin Singletary. Scadabo's going to win reps. He's going to be an early down guy. He's going to be a short yardage guy. That effort is really, really impressive to me. I think that you just draft good football players, and I think that he is a good football player. And this guy's also just a winner, and he played hurt for a good portion of that last season. So there's also plenty of running backs in this draft class, by the way. Like, I'm not totally committed to just one player. I'm 100%. You guys are mentioning Judkins. Like, there's tons of different players to draft. So I'm going to be happy just getting one of these guys, because I do think it's such a strong class, one of the strongest we've seen in a long time. Pretty excited to see where they all go, where the Giants end up going with this position. But I think I got a little off track there. Oh, okay. So the other thing I wanted to mention was, you said just draft BPA across the board, Anthony. At the moment, I'm in the same boat as you. Just the situation of the Giants need talent, and they need good talent, and drafting for need doesn't always help you with winning football games. If the Giants draft BPA and get the best possible players in this draft class, 1, you can't go wrong. 2, the depth on this team needs an upgrade. And 3, there's a lot of starting positions that need upgrades too. And fortunately, Anthony, it's kind of falling into place here where a lot of the BPA positions are spots that we actually need help. Whether it's Hunter at receiver, to pair with Neighbors, whether it's Abdul Carter to add a second elite edge rusher. Kayvon Thibodeaux is not even close to stopping me from drafting a player like that. And then, you go into the second round, defensive tackle. We need a defensive tackle next to Dexter Lawrence to stop the run, a little bit of pass rush upside. We need another offensive lineman. Like, there's a lot of different things here. Any position the Giants really draft is going to help solve a need for us. So I do think going BPA, you will win more games because of that. It will automatically, like you're saying, ETC, it will automatically fill holes that we have. That is what the good teams do. They draft BPA, they plug good players in, even when they have good talent. It also allows you to have a surplus. You know what I mean? Imagine you have a surplus of really good talent. You can now trade those pieces, any additional pieces, if you need to or want to improve weaker positions on your team, or add draft capital to positions that you may need to address in future drafts. So it allows you flexibility. The Giants have just been so low on flexibility because of how weak the roster has been. Now they can have a chance, go full on BPA, solve holes automatically. And if you have a surplus, you can use that to solve weaknesses on your team elsewhere. So that's, kind of how I feel right now. But Anthony, I know there's a couple super chats you want to catch up on here.
Yeah, I'll just say to that point, I always say BPA is the right way to go. The Giants and every NFL team should always be drafting BPA unless you're drafting for need of a quarterback. The Giants, like I said earlier, though, are no longer desperately in need of a quarterback, so they can afford to go BPA. Not saying that Russell Wilson is some long-term solution for the Giants. He most certainly is not. But for this season, they can afford to wait on the quarterback if they want to. But if they feel like they need to get a quarterback, yes, that is the only position that I draft for need. Egypt Steel 85 sending us a super chat here saying, just supporting you guys, Egypt Steel 85. Thank you so much for your support. It really does mean the world to us.
Absolutely. Love the support, Egypt. So you've been here a couple days in a row, actually. I know we didn't stream yesterday, but you've been here frequently. So really appreciate you joining the Frequent Flyers FSG Miles program. Lots to come and lots of in-flight entertainment for you. So appreciate you coming by once again and offering your support. Really means a lot to us, Anthony. I'll let you kick off the next super chat.
Yep, this one's from Dean. Appreciate you so much, Dean. Thanks for sending in this super chat saying, personally, I would like to see the Giants flip Kayvon for a pick. It isn't worth it to pick up his fifth-year option. Him and Neal were misses. We need dogs. Yeah, obviously Evan Neal definitely was a miss, and that fifth-year option is not getting picked up. I do think the Giants are going to pick up Kayvon Thibodeaux's fifth-year option, though, because, even if they decide essentially what I'm trying to say, they could pick up the fifth-year option, and if they don't want to trade him now, that fifth-year option gives them more time to trade him. They could hold on to him for another year and trade him next offseason if they do pick up the fifth-year option. So you might not think that he's worth the fifth-year option price tag. I believe it's over $16 million for that 5th year, Alex, which is definitely a hefty amount. However, let's imagine Kayvon Thibodeaux has another 10-sack season this year. He's going to be worth of that $16 million going into his final season of his contract. So I think it's best practice for the Giants to pick up that 5th year option, whether they trade him now or trade him later, or just hold on to him, because if he continues to develop into a star, that's totally possible. So I am in favor of picking up the 5th year option on Kayvon Thibodeaux, just because it gives the Giants more flexibility to maneuver with him and his contract. But as for trading him, if they do trade him, they potentially could get a valuable pick. There might be a lot of teams around the league that view Kayvon Thibodeaux as untapped potential. They might think that he has a skill set that the Giants haven't properly utilized potentially, and maybe another team would be willing to sacrifice a top 100 draft pick. And if you're getting a top 100 draft pick for Kayvon Thibodeaux, I think there's enough there to consider it. But still, personally, like I had earlier with my Carter take, I think you hold on to all 3 of those guys in the edge room, and you just continue to build and try and make a really great stable of pass rushers. So I get the incentive for potentially trading Thibodeaux, especially if you're getting a top 100 pick, like I said, or if you're utilizing Thibodeaux in a trade to move up and get an even better prospect, somebody that you think can make more of an impact this year than Thibodeaux. Yeah, there are different ways where I could see Thibodeaux being traded as a positive, but for me personally, I'd rather hold on to him, keep that stable of pass rushers together, and I would need an offer that blows me away in order to be incentivized to trade away Kayvon Thibodeaux personally. But Alex, what do you think about that? How are you feeling about potentially trading away Kayvon Thibodeaux?
I mean, listen, we just spent a 5th overall pick on him 3 years ago. And listen, like when you look at his 5th year option, I'm picking up the 5th year option, by the way, Anthony, because that's control over him. And another team will absolutely be more inclined to trade for him if you pick up that 5th year option, because now you get 2 years of control compared to 1. So you do pick it up because it gives you leverage. And I think his 5th year option is below $20 million. And with pass rushers getting paid as much as they are, that is extremely efficient price tag for a player that still has a lot of upside, in my opinion, in KT. So, I do think I appreciate the super chat, Dean. Much appreciated as always. I do think you pick up the tag though, or you pick up the 5th year option because it gives you leverage in trading him away. If you want to trade him, 2 years is better than 1. Otherwise a team's going to acquire him for 1 year and then risk him leaving. And what if he has a really, really good year and suddenly he's being paid way more on an extension or a new deal than he would have, on the 5th year option. So that's why I would be doing that. I think that probably is how I would go about it. But in the meantime, I don't think we have to give up on Kayvon Thibodeaux. I think that you can get Kayvon and you can get Carter and you can get Burns all involved every game, right? Rotationally, they're going to have to get involved as just 3 different pass rushers. Guys get hurt. Anthony, you said it before. Guys get injured, especially pass rushers all the time. If one guy gets hurt, well, you have another really good freaking player to step in and kind of take over. How about on 3rd downs? It's 3rd and 7 and you want 3 pass rushers on the field. You're not running the ball. You want to have Carter standing over the center, getting crazy. Think about how diverse and unique and creative you can get with this defense. You don't need to trade Kayvon Thibodeaux. You can just use him a little bit more strategically. Use the NASCAR package. Bring it back. I'm going to use the word again. I tweeted it this morning. Identity. The Giants can create an identity through the trenches. You draft a defensive tackle. You could even just go BPA and naturally build one of the best defenses in football. Like that could be what happens here. And if that happens, I don't think we're going to be very upset about it because we have a superstar offensive playmaker in the making with Neighbors. We still have Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and you can always go and get a quarterback or sell the farm, do whatever you have to do to get a quarterback in 2026. And Anthony, what happens if Russell Wilson balls out? What if he has a really good year? And the Giants are like, well, why don't we just keep him for an extra season? It's not a crazy thing to consider because, look, Shedeur Sanders is not walking in and winning a Super Bowl. It's going to take years of development and time to get there. So I'm not like pushing the idea that Russell Wilson could ball out and they could extend him for an extra season just yet.
I've said that several times. There is absolutely an opportunity here. Let me actually backtrack and rephrase this. With Russell Wilson, the reason why I preferred him over Aaron Rodgers is because there is a possibility of Russell Wilson playing well enough to earn an extension. It's not possible for Aaron Rodgers at 41, about to be 42 years old. Even if he did play real well, you're not getting 4 years out of him. That's not possible. But for Russell Wilson, if he balls out this year, 35 touchdowns, 10 picks, Giants win 8 games, yeah, he's going to get extended. And it might be a 3-year deal because he could play until he's about 40 potentially, since really good Hall of Fame quarterbacks play into their 40s. So again, I'm not saying that I foresee that happening with Russell Wilson. I'm not predicting that he's going to have a massive breakout bounce back season and earn that extension. But the fact that it's a possibility is why I preferred him to Aaron Rodgers in free agency. So I am glad that you brought that up. And of course, that's why the Giants need to be careful about whether or not they do draft a quarterback and where they draft that quarterback and how quickly they intend on getting that quarterback on the field. So it's very interesting. Last thing that I'll say about the defensive line before I get into this next super chat is just the depth chart here that I want to bring up from 2011. Justin Tuck, Linval Joseph, Chris Canty, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Osi Umenyiora. That's 5 high-quality starting defensive linemen that the New York Giants had when they won Super Bowl 46. I'm not even bringing up Super Bowl 42. I think that defensive line was even better. But that's 5 starters on the defensive line. The Giants right now have 3. Adding a 4th is not a bad thing with Abdul Carter. So that's really my take on it. I think if you're a good defensive coordinator, which it remains to be seen, we shall see whether or not Shane Bowen is a good defensive coordinator for the Giants. But if you're a good defensive coordinator, you'll find ways to get these guys on the field all together. Anyway, next super chat here from Jeffrey Wheeler. Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for your generosity. Round 2, Tyler Booker, Jackson Dart, and Josh Simmons are the BPAs available. Who are you taking? Simmons is ranked 25. Yeah, so this is actually a really fun question here because you're kind of giving us a draft board and asking us to draft from this board, and I think that's pretty exciting. Jackson Dart, listen, he's a popular pick there for the Giants at 34. Everybody loves to kind of pencil him in there or have the Giants try and trade up into the first round for Jackson Dart, and he would be a strong contender. But I actually do really like Tyler Booker here as well for the Giants and Josh Simmons. I don't think enough attention has been paid to some of these offensive linemen who could be available in round 2 for the New York Giants because offensive line absolutely still is a need. They only re-signed Greg Van Roten and Aaron Stinney, didn't make an upgrade at guard. And right tackle, yes, I like Jermaine Illuminor. He's only got 1 year left on his contract. So I actually think the best player available here would be Josh Simmons and would probably be the proper selection. I think he's going to go in the first round, but if he makes it there to the Giants at 34, I'm taking Simmons, putting him at right tackle, and I'm moving Illuminor to guard.
Exactly what I was going to say. Listen, Jermaine Illuminor has 1 year left on his deal, and as Anthony deals with the Black Plague, I do think Simmons is the best option because, listen, guard is way easier to figure out than offensive tackle. Way easier. If Josh Simmons is there, and NFL.com projects him to be an above average starter with some development. If he's there at 34, you take him. And the reason is, Illuminor can move into right guard where has experience and he's a good player. And then Josh Simmons, if he could win that job outright in camp. And if not, he waits, he sits, he learns, and he takes over in 2026. And then you have your solution there who's 4 years of cost control, 3 more years after 2025. So I'm going Josh Simmons for sure. He's the best player on the board and he gives you flexibility. If he wins the job or he looks really good in camp, you can move Jermaine Illuminor to right guard where now you have a really good offensive line on paper, or Josh Simmons needs a little bit more time. Illuminor stays the right tackle, and you still feel good about what you have. It's a win-win in my book. I think it's a very, very good situation to be in, and you want high-quality players that have a lot of increase and stuff like that, or a lot of possibility and a lot of potential. I'm going BPA here, and Simmons kills 2 birds with 1 stone, allows you to move Jermaine Illuminor inside if need be, or Jermaine Illuminor stays at right tackle and Simmons learns a little bit, and you have a really good backup piece, really good depth piece at tackle, worst case scenario in year 1.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I would like to have. Depth at tackle is so rare, especially for the Giants. So having a short-term and long-term solution at right tackle sounds fantastic to me. Definitely something that I would be all over. And hey, let's not discount the fact that Evan Neal is still on this roster. Could he turn it around? Probably not, but we shall see. Next super chat here from Kendall Alexander. Appreciate it so much. Saying taking Carter makes 0 sense. Go Campbell if no quarterback. And Alex, this is pretty interesting. And I'm going to share this with you. This is kind of strange, so bear with me here. But this is how you know that I'm really dedicated to the New York Giants and talking about the New York Giants. Because last night I was dreaming about the NFL draft and the New York Giants. I woke up this morning and I was like, wow, did that really happen? What day is it?
Streaming in his head and his dreams now?
Dude, yes, I was streaming in my dream. It's crazy. I live stream so much. I love live streaming so much, but I live stream so much that I'm now streaming in my dreaming. But anyway, in this dream, the Giants had Carter and Hunter on the board and Sanders. Everybody they wanted was there, and they passed over all 3 of those players and took some random guard, and I was pissed and I was screaming on a live stream. And that's what I went through in my dream. And I will say this, if they took Will Campbell, the offensive tackle / potentially guard out of LSU, instead of Carter or Hunter, my dream would come true and I would start screaming on the live streaming. So that's my take on it. Listen, I like Will Campbell a lot. I think he's a great prospect. He actually did reach the requisite arm length to play tackle. He missed it earlier, and then I think he reached it at his pro day, or he reached it at the combine, just barely sure, but he's got the arm length. He can play tackle, and he's got versatility to play guard as well, and he's a really good pass protector. I do like Will Campbell quite a bit. So if the Giants were to trade down in this year's draft and land Will Campbell, I'd be happy. However, Will Campbell is not the same caliber of prospect in my mind that Hunter or Carter are. And I will not pass over either of those two prospects for Will Campbell, because to me, that would be taking Campbell out of need, feeling as though you need more offensive linemen. The Giants' offensive line isn't good enough, so you're passing over the BPA, best player available, in favor of need. I don't like doing that. I'm not agreeing with that strategy. So personally, Kendall, I would take Carter. I think that Carter fits better because he's the best player available. If you're drafting for need and that's your kind of mentality, yeah, maybe Campbell makes more sense, but I think Campbell only makes sense if the Giants do trade down.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate the super chat. Nonetheless, taking Carter makes zero sense. Obviously, you're welcome to your own opinion. In this instance, getting an offensive tackle is never a bad idea, which is why we just talked about Josh Simmons with the 34th overall pick. And we think that, guy getting a plus starter with that type of potential in the second round, I really like that idea, over taking Campbell in the first. Like you said, Anthony, if they wanted a player like that, I'm happy to trade back a couple spots, get more draft capital, and go for a Campbell. But guys, like, you just watch Micah Parsons, right? We already skipped over him. We lost him. We got Kadarius Toney instead. I don't want to make that same mistake. Abdul Carter has all pro potential. He is just sniffing and scratching the surface of when it comes to his upside, just looking at the tangible traits that he has. And I mean, he is 21 years old. You just look at that player and say, this guy could be a superstar. I don't want to pass on that. I just can't fathom the idea of passing on it, to be quite honest with you. I'm going Carter, I'm going Hunter. And if he's not there, I'm going Carter. That's BPA. Like that is what that means. That's what it looks like. And Abdul Carter is not a small dude. I don't think he's that small. He's 6'3", 252 pounds. And a lot of people, that we're just talking about the NASCAR package. The NASCAR package is usually meant for third downs. It's your 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. You're using all your pass rushers, right? Because the opposing team is likely not going to run on you. You're just getting after the quarterback, forcing premature throws, getting creative, moving around on the defensive front. It's not a 1st and 2nd down package you usually use. You're using it on 3rd downs, but in the past they obviously were a little bit more. It was a different time, a different era too, though.
No, you're right. It's a passing down package. However, with Dexter Lawrence, you could get away with using it on 1st and 2nd round, is the point that I want to make. Plus, being the fact that Carter is not a small dude. He's a big dude.
He is a dude. He is a big dude.
He's strong. I get it. Like, Tips is 258. Carter is 250. I see this comment here from the Illa NYG. I understand this, but yes, he's young. He's going to pack on more pounds, and he plays above his weight class, in my opinion. Like, he's a really strong guy, and he holds his weight differently, in my opinion, than a guy like Thibodeaux. I think he's stronger in his lower half. Like, if you were to put those two guys in a gym room and have them do squats, I would probably bet on Carter having the higher squat PR. So that essentially is what it comes down to me. That lower body strength allows him to compete more on the interior. Plus, he's done it. Like, we've seen the film, and he has played all over the place at linebacker, on the edge, and moved onto the interior and provided some pass rushing there. So no, I wouldn't necessarily, use NASCAR frequently on 1st and 2nd down. However, if you're facing a pass-heavy team, or if we're talking about 2-minute drills where they got to get downfield quickly,
15.
Yeah, exactly. There are definitely opportunities to get that package mixed in on 1st and 2nd down, especially when you have a guy like Dexter Lawrence manning the interior, holding you against the run. So, and also, Brian Burns is a good run defender. There's a weird narrative. Giants fans seem to think he's not a good run defender. False. He is a very good run defender. I am a huge fan of Brian Burns, and I think that he is a great player on both ends of that spectrum. I know that they are all technically a little bit lighter. This is a great comment down here and great comparison. If you do have concern with drafting Carter and you don't think he can compete on the interior, this is the comment to convince you of that. And this is a great comment here. I just want to highlight that and state that I think this is a really good and well-informed, with a lot of research in here on this comment. But again, I just think Carter has that lower body strength that he needs, and having Dexter Lawrence really makes all the difference here. You can get those guys on the field because of Dexter Lawrence being the best nose tackle, pure nose tackle who lines up over the center in the NFL. So moving on to this super chat here from Greg J. Appreciate it so much, saying, Anthony, you're right. I'm right. Let's go. Thank you. And also saying, don't forget we had Dave Tollefson as a depth piece with 5 sacks in 2011, proving a deep rotation of pass rushers helps. Absolutely. And that's pretty much what the point that I'm trying to make here is having more good pass rushers is never a bad thing. What's better than 2 good pass rushers? 3. What's better than 3 good pass rushers? 4. What's better than 4? 5. The Giants literally had 5 or 6 capable defensive linemen on that 2011 team. And if you're even looking at that 2007-8 team, Alex, absolutely stacked. We're talking Michael Strahan, Barry Cofield, Fred Robbins, O.C. Manura, Justin Tuck, Jay Alford even had that big hit in the Super Bowl. I remember that. And Dave Tollefson. They had a lot of dogs on that defensive line. Adding more dogs to the defensive line would not be a bad thing. As you know, Alex, and as I know you share this opinion with me, Hunter would be my player at 3 if both guys were available. But if Hunter's not there, there's no way I'm complaining about drafting a player like Carter, especially as you said, it's a different NFL. It's not exactly playing defensive line the same way. You're looking at guys like Micah Parsons and the versatility that they provide, moving all over the place. That's something that you can get with Micah Parsons that a lot of defensive linemen back then were not capable of or not even asked to do. This is a versatile chess piece on your defensive line, and I think that's what really sells me on potentially drafting Carter and what makes him so exciting as a prospect to me.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, the depth necessary for a defensive line injury. How many times have we seen injuries happen to us? I mean, Burns played hurt most of last year. Azeez Ojulari hurt all the time. Kayvon Thibodeaux, a couple injuries here and there. You need depth. You need good quality depth. Kayvon Thibodeaux is going to play a lot, but also, how about just the fact of letting a fire under his ass? You know what I mean? Sometimes Kayvon like acts as if he's this amazing pass rusher. I want him to go up and Abdul Carter to press him for reps. You know what I mean? And he will. Abdul Carter will beat his ass. And I need Kayvon Thibodeaux to have something to fight for, have a competition, have something to elevate his game. Abdul Carter is going to give him the run of his life for money. You know, Kayvon was once a first consensus overall pick. Dropped to 5. There were concerns. He's been a little bit off, a little bit on. I need him to show up every week and dominate. Let them compete for opportunities here. Let them compete for reps. Let the best man win. You know, you can increase both of their value by having that friendly competition. You know, Kayvon just kind of walks around like he has earned it, but I don't think he has earned it, to be quite frank. I think that he's been gifted this opportunity because of where he was drafted. You draft Carter, he's going to put some serious pressure on him. So, you know, and not to mention they're both going to get on the field plenty. So I do think that, you know, it's generally a good thing to have more than enough talent at these different positions. But, you know, appreciate the super chat, Greg, and you make a really good point. Depth is critical. Obviously, Dave Tollefson and who knows, Chauncey Golsey could step up and have a really good season as a depth piece if injuries pop up or this or that. It's all critical. It's all super, super, super important. And I think that the Giants are doing a pretty good job. If they get Carter, their defensive line is going to be one of the best we've seen in a decade. You know what I mean? It's going to be really, really impressive. And their secondary also just got a major boost as well. Their defense will be full of young talent. Tyler Nubin, Deontay Banks, I think bounces back. We have Javon Holland and Paulson Debo for multiple seasons locked in. You have Brian Burns locked in for long-term. Dexter Lawrence locked in for long-term. Carter would be on a rookie contract. Kayvon's still on a rookie contract. Lots of young, controlled assets on defense. Allows you. Now you're just looking at the offense saying we can dump everything we have into getting the offense right. If your defense has that much talent, that much quality, and those cost-efficient contracts and long-term deals in place, you can look at the offense and say, now all we have to do is dump every bit of resources into the offense. And think about this: if you draft a quarterback next year, and maybe you add a couple pieces in the middle of this draft or wherever it might be to the offensive side, you will have a really good cap space situation too, because you'll have your quarterback on a rookie contract. You'll have a superstar, hopefully, an Abdul Carter in this instance, in this context we're talking about, on a rookie contract. You have a neighbor still on a rookie contract, and you'll have tons of money to spend on going and getting the best possible free agents to upgrade your offense, whether that be a receiver, whether that be an offensive lineman, whether that be a tight end, whether that be anything, an offensive guard. That's kind of how you think, how you could go about it. Theoretically, obviously, putting it into practice is a much more difficult experiment.
Well, everything is always easier said than done, especially when we're talking about drafting for the Giants. But I'll say this, man, like this Giants defensive line already is the strength of the team. And if you're making it even stronger, yes, you're talking, like you said, Alex, about putting it on paper as one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. Two of the Giants' top 5 best players on their roster right now play on this defensive line, Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence. If you're adding a third star to that mix, and hey, let's not even discount the fact that Thibodeaux is still only, 24 years old? He still could become a star. Like, we are disappointed in him. Sure, he hasn't developed the way that we thought he would. The Giants have had a scheme change as well. They've been having a lot of shifting, moving parts on this defensive line. It's still possible that he takes that step forward and develops into a player that was worthy of the 5th overall pick. Obviously, the talent was there. That's why he got drafted there. That's why everybody probably watching this chat was excited about him being drafted 5th overall to the Giants. The potential and talent is still there. Maybe this year he has that breakout, and maybe he has that breakout alongside his new running mate in Carter. It's totally possible. So we'll see what happens. And before I get to this next super chat, Alex, I just want to give a big shout out to everybody who's tuning in live right now. Not only the 381 of you on YouTube, make sure you smash the like button, but hey, major shout out to the 475 live viewers over on Twitter/X.com. Appreciate everybody tuning into this. Really, all of your support means the world to us. Smash the like button if you haven't already done so. Let's keep this family and this community growing. So, next super chat here, Alex, from Fabian Rodriguez. Appreciate you so much, saying BPA filling a need is a sweet spot. Hunter is the sweet spot with the need at wide receiver 2. If the Browns take Hunter, trade back with the Pats and take Mason Graham, ? So that would be a trade down one spot. Again, we've had this conversation before, Alex. I don't think that's something the Patriots would really be into personally. But maybe if they really want Abdul Carter, I guess it would be possible. Carter's floor is essentially the 4th overall pick. He's only met with those 4 teams. So maybe that would be a possibility. I don't know what that trade would look like. I like Mason Graham. Again, I don't think that he's going to be an option because the Giants are going to take one of the 3, Hunter, Carter, or Sanders. But if they do move down in any instance, yeah, Mason Graham would be a top target for them, because that would be BPA and filling the need, the sweet spot, as Fabian is saying right here, kind of getting a defensive tackle, which you need, but also a great player, BPA, on the board. So I agree, though, with the strategy. BPA filling a need is a sweet spot. That's absolutely the truth. When you can draft BPA, you should. And when you go BPA and it happens to be a need, that's just even better. It's like double dipping. You're getting exactly what you dreamed of. So, Alex, what's your take on the super chat right here from Fabian?
Appreciate you, Fabian, and absolutely, it's something to consider. Trading back one spot, taking Mason Graham. Are you going to be upset about it? Absolutely not. You probably get extra draft capital too, but you're passing on Carter in this instance. So, definitely the draft is going to fall in a way to us no matter what. Either Hunter or Shedeur are going to be there, or either Carter or Shedeur are going to be there. So you can make the decision that the Giants want to make. But Anthony, let me ask you a question and kind of spin off of this very generous super chat. For people that are saying that once again, for the 7th straight season, we're going to skip out on drafting a quarterback in the 1st round. How does that make you feel? And I know you're a proponent, we should have been taking quarterbacks earlier, but how do you feel right now, saying, well, Sanders is the only option that we would even consider at 3rd overall, the only quarterback option. It is going to be a force no matter what if you're taking him at 3, because there's no one else to consider, right? Dart's not going 3, and Sanders is the only one you could even slightly justify, in my opinion, going 3. Do you feel that skipping once again on a quarterback, even though he's the only one there and the only option there, do you think that once again it's a short-sighted kind of situation, or do you think it's just once again skipping out on that opportunity to take one when we do have the chance? How do you feel about that, even though you're kind of a little bit more on the side of BPA right now?
Yeah, I am more on the side of BPA right now, but I am the guy who always says when you have the opportunity to take a swing, you need to take a swing, right? I've pretty much made that my whole persona for the first half of this offseason. But now that we're here and we have a starting quarterback in Russell Wilson, I don't think we need to take the quarterback at number 3 overall. And in fact, now that we have a quarterback who I believe can start 17 games for us this season at an above average quality, I think the better strategy is to adopt what the Bills and the Chiefs and the Ravens did, which I brought up before, and even the Eagles to some extent. Essentially, you build up the roster as good as you can. You take BPA here, you sign this free agent there, you make the best roster that you possibly can. And then once you have a farm to sell, You then sell the farm the following offseason and go ahead and get your rookie quarterback, and you drop him into a very good situation. Rather than dropping Sanders onto this team where we're talking, Alex, the whole conversation so far on this live stream has been, well, we need more talent here. We need more talent there. We need to add here. We need a player there. Is that the best situation for a rookie quarterback? Probably not. But if we add talent here, there, and all these other positions that we've mentioned, and then drop a rookie quarterback into the situation next year, it might be the perfect environment for a rookie quarterback. So now that we have an actual plan here at quarterback, like we have a bridge, we have a solid competitor in Russell Wilson, I do feel comfortable going the Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, Eagles route, building up the roster as best as you can. Yeah, maybe we're picking 15 to 20 next year, but you know what? So were the Chiefs when they then traded up to go ahead and get Patrick Mahomes. What if we do it that way? We have our own version of a trade up for a quarterback and land our version of a Mahomes. Hopefully we get a player of that caliber. Maybe we won't, whatever. But that strategy seems to be the way that works. Again, the Bills went to the playoffs the year prior to them drafting Josh Allen. They just traded up to go ahead and get him. The Ravens were a competitive playoff team with Joe Flacco, and then they traded up to go get Lamar Jackson. And all of these guys, the big common denominator isn't the fact that they were traded up for to obtain. They were traded up for to obtain by playoff teams is the denominator. They already had playoff caliber rosters. They had a lot of talent. So when you've got that caliber of a roster, that's the best opportunity to drop a quarterback into the mix. Right now, the Giants would definitely be having a Shedeur Sanders fighting for his life at times with the roster that they have, because they do have holes. But if you take another year and you continue to build this thing out and then you drop a quarterback in, that might be the better strategy. So if the Giants take Shedeur Sanders, I'm not going to complain, because they're taking a swing, and they're taking a big swing, and I will commend them for that. And if they hit, it doesn't matter if he was a reach. It doesn't matter where you draft the quarterback if you hit on the quarterback. But right now, as things stand, with the Giants here available to take a potentially generational talent with the 3rd overall pick, and additionally having a roster that needs more addressing, I would totally be all in on the Giants passing on a quarterback this year, building out the roster, and doing everything in their power to land the quarterback of their dreams next offseason. I think it's totally an avenue that they can take. Again, I'll be happy if they take Sanders, but I am leaning towards the BPA route, as you mentioned, Alex. And so, after I say all of that, and as we continue to wind down the live stream over the course of these next 10 minutes, I am curious to hear your take on that. Obviously, I've said it many times before, the Chiefs model is how I like to refer to it. But at first, I think that you were kind of against that Chiefs model when I first brought that up as an idea earlier this offseason. Where do you stand now that the Giants have a quarterback in Russell Wilson, now that they're picking 3rd overall? When you're looking at that Chiefs model, I brought that up originally, Alex, as a comparison for trading for Matthew Stafford. But now that we're here with Russell Wilson, and I'm bringing up that Chiefs model again, where do you stand with it now, all these months later?
Well, look, I would have taken Cam Ward if we had the chance. Like, whether or not we had Russ or Jameis, I would have taken Cam Ward if we had the chance to draft him. But we don't, and I don't like Sanders enough to risk 3rd overall. And for the people saying that, Sanders has the best completion percentage in CFB history, you're absolutely right. But let's not ignore the context of where that comes from. Let me read these stats to you. 24.1% of Sanders' passes were behind the line of scrimmage last season. Take that, just good. But wait.
Yes.
34% of his passing attempts were 0 to 9 yards. Okay, we're talking about a guy that lives behind the 10 yards, behind the chains. That is where his percentage comes from. He's very accurate. Yeah.
Can I counter?
Yes.
He's the highest graded quarterback in college football last season, throwing past the sticks. 10 plus yards downfield was the highest graded quarterback throwing past the sticks. Sure. And read off, if you're good, you got to be fair here. So read off his percentage of passes that were 20 plus yards downfield.
I shall right now. And
we did watch a pretty high number.
We did watch That's Him. We did watch plenty of Sanders on the stream. Plenty of it. We did multiple games reviewing it. So, if you say we did not watch the games, we absolutely did. And I'm not saying Sanders wasn't great beyond the sticks. He had 16.4% of his throws, 10 to 19 yards, and 15.6%. So listen, we're talking about a smaller sample. And I think that that's kind of what I'm trying to say is, he graded very well, but the sample size is significantly smaller than other quarterbacks in this draft class. For example, Cam Ward had 18% behind the line of scrimmage, 34% the same exact short, but 10% higher in the medium range. So we're talking about a much larger sample of actual throws past the sticks, which is what I'm trying to say is like you're just looking at like the actual amount of attempts. But I'm not saying that Sanders is a bad quarterback. What I'm saying is if we're going to talk about his percentage, his completion percentage, we have to also look at where those throws happened. They happened mostly behind 10 yards. Actually, a large chunk of them happened behind the line of scrimmage. So, you have to factor that in when you're talking about a percentage of completions. If you're going to live behind the line of scrimmage or live before the sticks in the NFL and the game is going to speed up and you're not going to have the time and you're not going to be able to drift in the pocket, though that amount of throws, intermediate, 10 plus yards downfield is going to decrease substantially if you're going to play the way he does in the NFL, where you're drifting and you're holding onto the ball too long, which are major red flags of his. I think that these are things to consider.
Listen, I don't disagree necessarily with the things that you're saying, and I get where you're coming from, and I get the points that you're making. However, I'm going to continue to counter here. First of all, I need to address that's him in the chat. We watched all 22. You're saying that Alex just watched clips. Him and I both watched all 22 live on the channel. That's not all of the all 22 that we've watched. We have downloaded every single one of his games last season in all 22 format that we both sit and we watch through all the time to make these opinions and this analysis. But we did watch them live on the channel. So you can't say that he only watched clips when we live stream reacted to the all 22 for you guys. We've watched the all 22. We've watched the games. We've watched the highlights. We saw everything. So we have taken as much information as possible, and we have added in statistics and analytics to it as well, which is what we're getting into right now. But I need to go ahead and continue to counter with Alex here and spar with him, because you're talking about Shedeur like all he does is check down and throw screens, and it's just not true. You were talking about him in comparison, let's say, to Cam Ward. Cam Ward, 16.5% of his passes were 20 plus yards downfield, 15.6% for Shedeur Sanders. That's a negligible difference. That's 75 attempts for Sanders compared to 75 attempts for Cam Ward. They threw the same number of 20 plus yard passes downfield. Now, yes, where you're correct about this is the medium 10 to 19 yard range was significantly different. 79 attempts for Sanders versus 114 attempts for Cam Ward. That is a pretty significant difference. However, like I said, when throwing past the sticks, Shedeur Sanders has the highest grade of any quarterback in college football, meaning he wasn't asked to push the ball downfield in that 10 to 19 yard range too much. But when he did, he was absolutely money. And we're talking about a guy who threw 24% of his passes behind line of scrimmage, sure, but we're still talking about Cam Ward threw 33.9% of his passes short 0 to 9 compared to 37% for Sanders. It's a negligible difference, and it oftentimes isn't about the quarterback and their tendency and desire to check down and throw it short. It's more so just the offense that they're playing. And Alex, we know Pat Shurmur's offense.
Garbage.
We know he is the check down merchant. He forced the quarterbacks to throw it short, and it actually left a major stain on Daniel Jones for years to come because of Pat Shurmur refusing to call those deep shots and oftentimes running all those hitches and curls and asking the ball to be thrown short. It actually had a long-term effect on Daniel Jones where he wasn't able to break out of that habit of throwing it short. So if your argument is he's already been conditioned to throw short and not look past the line of scrimmage, maybe that's a good argument for Sanders. Maybe you're saying that the Pat Shurmur stain has been left behind on Shedeur the same way that it was on Daniel Jones. However, I don't fully agree with that. I think that Sanders has shown a willingness to throw past the sticks. I think he's shown tremendous accuracy throwing short, past the sticks, deep, everywhere. But he has been playing in the confines of an offense, and that needs to be taken into account. That context is super important. So I get what you're saying. I get all your points and your takes. Yes, a lot of his throws were short, but the other half of it that I've also mentioned many times, his throws were on time and they were accurate, and it created a lot of yards after the catch opportunities, which is so crucial and what is really the differentiating factor between him and the likes of a Daniel Jones.
For sure. But my argument is going to be going from playing in the CFB, or going from playing, against lackluster competition to the NFC East is going to be like going from high school to Alabama in a day. That is what it's going to be like for Sanders. He is not going to be ready to take on this. He's going to have to sit for a whole year. And I'm not taking a quarterback third overall with the intention of sitting him for a whole year when my GM and head coach are literally on the freaking hot seat. They need to win. And they're going to take a quarterback and then sit him for it. There's no freaking way. Like, the completion percentage in the Big 12 is not relevant to the NFL. It's not relevant going up against the Eagles pass rush and the Cowboys pass rush and a new and improved Commanders pass rush. in 1 year is not even remotely close. We can't use these ridiculous stats to justify future success. It doesn't work. And I just want to say, like, I just want to say from the perspective of we are being cornered into only considering one quarterback here. There's only one guy to take at 3, and there's no other options. We have no one to compare him to. We are cornering ourselves into making a decision based on the stats of one player and not multiple options here. That is why, we're backed into a corner and we're making ourselves crazy over one guy who probably is not the right decision because of that desperation.
But you're saying that we can't use these stats to justify potential future success, but you are literally trying to use them to justify potential failures in the future. Are you not?
No. I'm not saying potential failures. What I'm saying is it's going to be a larger learning curve because of the system he ran. And Amber 7, I like Shedeur Sanders. I just do not like him at 3. How many times do I have to say that?
Let me say this as well. Let me say this. We're talking about a guy who faced greater competition than Cam Ward, and you're saying slam dunk number 1 Cam Ward.
Because I like Cam Ward's projectable traits more than Shedeur Sanders. I think that he's a better athlete. I think he's a better pocket presence. I think he has a better arm. These are tangible traits that I'm leaning on, not completion percentages. You know what I mean? Like I'm just talking about.
Wouldn't that be more tangible?
What?
Like quantitative statistics, wouldn't that be more like
it's not because the context of where they happened and how they happened,
but also of facing greater competition.
And having the Heisman winner at receiver does not help his case.
But how is the learning curve so steep for Shedeur Sanders, but not for Cam Ward? Why does Shedeur Sanders need to sit for a year, but Cam Ward doesn't?
He does. I never said he doesn't. I think Cam Ward does have to sit. That's why I said I would take him.
Not going to sit. That's for sure. The number 1 overall pick never does.
He's not. But I wanted to. But like I said earlier, I was happy to draft Cam Ward, even though we had Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. I was happy to sit Cam Ward because I think his potential is so much greater because of his tangible traits. I don't think Sanders' tangible traits are that impressive. I don't think his arm is that good. I think he holds the ball for too long, and those pressures are only magnified in the NFL. If they were already a problem in college where he had the slowest time to throw in a Big 12, I am really freaking concerned with him in the NFL against elite pass rushers with an offensive line that has been leaky for a decade. There is no way anyone's going to convince me that Sanders' problems are going to disappear in the NFL when he has shown them over and over again with a poor offensive line, people say, in the Big 12. There's just no way.
But you understand that that's the coaching aspect of this. He can be developed. He can fix these traits. These are not unfixable.
For sure.
These are not problems that can't be fixed. And honestly, the way that you're describing the quarterbacks right now, Alex, it's like you're searching for the perfect guy. You're never going to get the perfect guy. Peyton Manning is not walking through the door anytime soon.
I'm certainly not.
You are going to have to make do with a quarterback who has flaws. And yes, Shedeur Sanders does have flaws. His flaws are fixable.
Look, dude, listen. I wanted Jaden Daniels last year. You guys know that. We couldn't get him. But Jaden Daniels as a prospect was a billion times better than Shedeur Sanders. And now we're talking about taking Sanders at 3 when Daniels was 2. These prospects are vastly different. I'm not forcing myself in. It is. But I'm not willing to force myself into a lesser quarterback at 1 pick difference a year apart. These are totally different players. Jaden Daniels I saw as a franchise quarterback with that level of upside. Shedeur Sanders is not even remotely close to what Jaden Daniels was last year. But I can't sit here and act like I'm willing to take Sanders at 3 because I don't even think they're remotely close. Like it's
but
not
some of the things that you're mentioning for Sanders that are flaws, we mentioned last year for Jaden Daniels. Yes, he was much better in other areas. He's got a great arm and he has better athleticism. Those things are true. But in terms of holding on to the ball too long, time to throw, drifting in the pocket, being oblivious to pressure sometimes and taking sacks, we said those things about Jaden Daniels as well. They were course-corrected and fixed by a great offensive scheme. I'm not discounting the fact that Brian Daboll doesn't have a plan if he drafts Shedeur Sanders. It doesn't have a scheme that can maximize his potential and take away opportunities for him to hold on to the ball too long and take those sacks. These are fixable problems. These are traits that can absolutely be coached out of him. And this is my favorite part about Shedeur. The guy is so self-aware. He has sat there in all of these interviews that he's done and said, I drift in the pocket too much. I hold on to the ball too long. That's what I need to work on, and then I'll be a great player at the NFL level. He recognizes it, and he is working on getting better at it. And I think that's a big part of this.
I want to be 6'3", but that doesn't mean I'm going to be 6'3" if I work hard at it. You know, if I stretch.
Okay, but I want Cam Ward not to be as turnover prone. That doesn't mean he's not going to be more turnover prone in the NFL where the competition is greater, like you're saying. And in fact, he hasn't even faced the caliber competition that Shedeur Sanders faced.
Sure. But what I'm trying to say is Jaden Daniels was able to lean on his athleticism to make up the difference between his weaknesses and his development. Cam Ward has the arm strength, the ability off platform, the ability off script to compensate for the lack of development that he has in certain areas. Sanders is not that level of quarterback. He's not great. He's not going to be great off script in the NFL. He's slow to react. He's slow to throw, and he drifts a lot. And those problems in the NFL are only going to be magnified.
Okay, Jaden Daniels threw 41.9% of his passes 0 to 9 yards this year.
Okay.
He was not a product of athleticism this year. He was a product of scheme, maximizing quick, accurate passing short. That is what Shedeur Sanders maximizes.
How many times did we see Daniels move in the pocket or maneuver or use his athleticism to make those throws more possible? Sanders is not even
I don't think he
close.
did that a ton this past year. I think a lot of what he did this past year was sitting in a scheme that maximized getting the ball out
go
as
look
fast
at
as
Daniel,
possible.
Go look at Jaden Daniels' rushing stats, and then we can talk about
I know
the
that Jaden Daniels is an athlete.
production.
I'm not talking about him as an athlete because Shedeur Sanders is not the same athlete as Jaden Daniels. I'm talking about them as pocket passers who ran an offense that emphasized throwing the ball short. Jaden Daniels ran an offense that asked for more screens and more short passing than any offense in the NFL. So I'm only bringing up Jaden Daniels because you were mentioning him as your draft darling from last year, and I understand why he was, and he deserves to be. But I think it's worth bringing that up as a comparison. We're talking about two guys now who are check down merchants in some way. They throw the ball short. They emphasize quick, short, intermediate passing. Shedeur Sanders made a living on that in college, and he can absolutely make a living on that in the NFL the same way that Jaden Daniels has begun to do as he took his team to the NFC Conference Championship game.
Sure, but my counter is when you need a big moment, there's no, and you need a dual threat quarterback if you're going to play that game, though, a lot of times. Because I mean, look, we can talk about Brock Purdy and his arm and his processing, elite processing. These guys are different in a lot of ways, and they're in a system, in a scheme. I don't even know the offense the Giants are trying to freaking run this year. We're talking about like what we think is going to happen. Does Sanders even fit the mold of what they're looking for?
Absolutely yes.
See, I'm not so sure because here's my take. He is probably not playing this year. And if he does, it's going to be a very small amount. Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen do not have the time to wait. If they draft this quarterback, he needs to be able to play today. And he is not going to. And the truth behind that is that if you are going to run the risk of drafting a quarterback just to change the offense next year into a system that does not fit his mold, does not fit what he wants, we just wasted the 3rd overall pick. These guys have to win now. And Jaden Daniels he had the best rookie season of any quarterback in history. So that's kind of where, obviously it's a totally different context in that regard.
I'm not talking about the level of success that they had. I'm talking about the schemes that they played in, because that was the argument that you were bringing up, was the schemes and the tendencies of Shedeur Sanders. The tendencies were the same for Jaden Daniels.
What I was trying to say is that Jaden Daniels as a prospect was head and shoulders better than Sanders, and that he was drafted second. But what I'm saying is he was drafted second overall. My point was that I'm not willing to take a far lesser quarterback because he's the only guy available at 3rd overall this year. It's not worth it to me. I don't think that you have to spend a draft pick this high on a player like this when he is not even remotely close to the top 3 quarterbacks last year in terms of being a prospect. I thought JJ McCarthy was a better prospect than Sanders. I thought that even Michael Penix, obviously the injuries were concerning, but I think Michael Penix was a better prospect than Shedeur Sanders as a pure thrower and a pure arm talent. And I'm sitting here we passed on those guys. And now we have to sit here and act like we have to force Sanders because he's the only guy on the board. And I'm not contradicting myself. This has been my take for months. You've been listening to this channel.
Did you really think J.J. McCarthy was a better prospect last year? I was really high on J.J. McCarthy. Did you really feel like J.J. McCarthy last year was
I wasn't
better?
that high on J.J. McCarthy. I really wasn't. But
what about Bo Nix? What about Bo Nix? Sanders or Bo Nix? Who's a better prospect coming out of college?
I'd say they're about even for me.
Bo Nix just went to the playoffs with the Broncos because he had an offensive scheme that maximized his strengths and minimized his weaknesses.
We're talking about Sean Payton's offense that has an identity. They had a plan. The Giants don't have a plan. The Giants have no identity. We don't even know what they're doing.
They have to have a plan. I am not going to sit here and be convinced that they do not have a plan.
Brian Daboll's sitting here telling us he doesn't even know if he's calling plays yet. So it's just
because he has a plan to work through a process this summer and see who is the best play caller. He's got 2 good options in terms of who can call plays.
Sanders isn't going to play this year, so it doesn't even matter.
That's not necessarily true. Injuries happen, A, and benchings happen, B. Russell Wilson's on a 10-year contract or $10 million contract. He could absolutely not play well enough. They're out of the playoff hunt by week 8, and boom, now Sanders is in the lineup. Don't even try and tell me Jameis Winston's going into the lineup at that point. That's not going to happen. Shedeur Sanders would be the one going into the lineup if Russell Wilson were to be benched.
Sure, but let's be honest here. Russell Wilson is going to give them an ounce of consistency, they're going to keep playing Russell Wilson. If he's going to look like he's able to save jobs, if he's playing well, they're not going to pull him from the lineup just to put Shedeur Sanders in, unless this team absolutely bottoms out again.
If they're playing well enough to keep him in the lineup, they're in the playoff hunt, and they have a long-term success plan at quarterback. And if they're playing well enough for Russell Wilson to stay in the lineup, it means that they did not need a Hunter or a Carter at number 3, and that it didn't make a major difference. But now they have a long-term succession plan at quarterback.
Sure, but now you're like, if we're in the hunt for the playoffs, that means Russell Wilson is playing really, really well. That does not mean that Shedeur Sanders is going to step in and be a good quarterback immediately. You know what I mean? Like
that does mean that he's getting the time that you are requesting afforded to him to sit, grow, and develop for a full year. And
my point is, I don't think it's worthwhile to spend. But at that point, like, why would you not just draft a quarterback next year? If you're in that situation, Sanders, in my opinion, does not.
You're here and you have the opportunity. You have the opportunity to take a quarterback. You don't know if you're going to have one next year.
But like Sanders is not worth taking at 3 to begin with. We're being pressured and out of desperation to lock ourselves into this specific player because there's no other options. You know, we had J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix, Bo Nix. We had all these options last year.
To be. You can move on from him after a couple of years if he's not cutting it.
But at that point, we just wasted all of the years that we had for Brian Burns, and Dexter Lawrence, and Andrew Thomas. We're just wasting these guys' years. We're going to reset next year with Shedeur Sanders, who is not worth taking 3 overall. And just because he sits doesn't mean he's going to be good, right? His traits athletically.
But how do you know he's not worth taking number 3 overall? Like, how do you know that?
Opinion.
Like,
it's just my opinion. Of course, I don't know. He could be great. Who knows? But in my opinion,
heard so many people say that. Like, we heard Patrick Mahomes was not a top 10 pick. He went top 10, and now he's the best quarterback in the world. He's the best player in the world. Like, people said that about Josh Allen.
Sure.
Like, we don't know this. Yes, he's got his limitations. He's got his flaws. But, like, we can counter. We can go back and forth as we've been doing and keep bringing up all these different elements. And I'm finding a bunch of evidence, statistical evidence, quantifiable data that suggests Shedeur Sanders could be a very successful quarterback as early as his rookie season.
You want to know what the biggest problem is? Is that I don't think the Giants coaching staff is good enough to maximize anyone.
If that's the case, then that's kind of like, that's where the argument starts and ends. Because if you just feel like you don't trust Dable and company, then yeah, you're not going to trust them to maximize Shedeur. But can you even trust them to maximize a guy like Carter or a guy like Travis Hunter then as well?
Right, let me just say, that's him. You're telling me I don't know. I haven't watched. I'm literally watching multiple teams pass over Shedeur Sanders in the first round right now who need quarterbacks. If the Browns pass on him,
I don't think that's happening. I think the Browns are taking him, but
if the Browns pass on him, if they do pass on him, that will just suggest that I guess the Browns aren't watching film. If the Giants pass on him, I guess the Giants aren't watching film. Is that right, Dad Sims? Is that how it works? So let's wait and see what happens before we make any indications here. But we watched it. I'm not a professional scout. I never claimed to be. You know, I just really look at this player and I say, I don't see the tangible upside. I don't see him breaking on a 50-yard run in the playoffs to save his team or give his team a chance to win. He is not even remotely close to the quality of quarterback that is needed for the Giants right now to get back into competency. They need to just go BPA, take the best player available, and try to win as many games this season to save their own asses. Sanders sitting on the bench, I think Hunter gives you a dynamic duo and cost efficiency that you need to build a foundation for a young quarterback. I don't personally see it. I don't think that Sanders is this insane quarterback. I don't see, I get the percentages. He has way too many red flags to be picked 3rd overall. And I don't see the athletic upside is limited as a pure quarterback. Yeah, sure. His mechanics are great. His arm talent is average at best. I don't see where this guy steps in as an elite quarterback in a system that is not even defined, right? We don't even know what the Giants system is yet. Right.
I would say that 99.999% of rookie quarterbacks do not step in and make an elite instant impact in year one.
Absolutely.
That's the argument for taking him now and giving him a year to sit and learn behind Russell Wilson.
I don't think he's gonna get much better sitting behind though. Like he learns the offense, but he's not physically elite in any trait. Physically, he can't run that fast. Is he? Is he mentally elite?
I would think so. Why wouldn't he?
Is he an elite processor in the Big 12? We're assuming he's going to turn into an elite processor in the NFL. After being in the Big 12?
I think you need to stop bringing up the Big 12, the competition thing. It just needs to stop being brought up because it's better competition than Cam Ward faced, and that's where the whole argument just falls on itself. And we've seen so many other quarterbacks.
But I'm talking about leaning on physical traits, and at least Cam has an elite trait. I understand that,
but mental traits are important as well. In fact,
Absolutely.
Mental traits, the quarterbacks succeeding in the NFL right now, all these top guys, they're more mental than they are physical.
But what I don't know. I don't see the mental genius from Shedeur Sanders either, drifting in the pocket, waiting too long to throw. I don't really see all these different things, all these red flags at a much lower level of talent. The Giants don't have a good offensive line until proven otherwise. He's going to walk right into the situation and get magnified in a much, much more dangerous setting in the windy MetLife Stadium where his arm is going to be exposed. When it's windy there and his arm talent is average, I don't see those throws getting there on time, man. Like I don't see those balls being on there on time when he's running around, drifting in the pocket, where he's adding 10 extra yards to his throws when he's not standing up and staying in the pocket.
His offensive line sucked. His play calling around him sucked.
The Giants' offensive line sucks, and their play calling sucks a lot of times too.
What did you say, that he's more situated to compete in this situation than another quarterback would be? He's used to this environment. He could compete in this environment.
I don't think that. That just, okay, sure, he competes in that environment. The Giants are a bottom 5 offense still. That's what the environment looks like. You know what I mean? Then that environment looks like a terrible offense where we just let Daniel Jones go because he could not even survive in that environment. We ruined him anyway. I don't know.
Dude, the guy plays in Colorado. It's brutal weather out there too.
Yeah, but it's also much thinner air quality and the ball goes further. So
you think he didn't travel? The guy traveled.
I watched him just throw a 50-yard pass inside, and it looked like he was leaning into it, having to step into it. There's arm talent there, the arm power. It's not even remotely close to Cam Ward, but you agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that, but it's not all arm strength. The arm strength, if it was just about arm strength, Tyree Jackson, that 6'7",
it's not about
tight end would have been, but arm strength is not everything. Joe Milton has the fastest throw of all time at the combine. He's not a superstar.
You're absolutely right, and it's not. I'm not saying it's about arm strength. What I'm saying is it's about throwing with a base and not having to lean into throws when you're under pressure.
I understand that, but I think that mechanically, if you're talking about throwing from a base, footwork wise, Shedeur Sanders has the best footwork of any quarterback in this class. He throws from the cleanest base. Obviously, I've got my reservations about patting the ball and some of the upper body motions, but from a clean base, he's got the best base out of anybody when throwing the football in this class.
Sure, but in the NFL, that clean base is going to be even more infrequent. You have to be able to throw off platform.
Not if they're running this quick, fast-passing offense that they've been trying to run with Daniel Jones, but Daniel Jones just can't get the goddamn ball out on times. That's really what it was.
Daniel Jones was probably the worst. I think we have a couple more super chats to get through.
We have a couple more super chats, and we need to wrap it up. I understand, but listen, I just like sparring with you, and
it's a great time. It's a great time.
I'm literally playing devil's advocate because I want to take Travis out there at 3, so I'm literally playing devil's advocate.
I think we should just start talking about how good Sanders is, so that the Browns get convinced.
Yeah. Somebody's listening to us. We got over 1,000 people in here. It's pretty incredible, and appreciate all the support. We're gonna fly through these last couple super chats and then go ahead and wrap it up. I was having a blast though, Alex, when we were having our debate here, watching the live chat on the side. Get him, Alex. Get him, Anthony. Oh, he's whooping his ass. It was so fun actually just watching everybody react to us like we were in a boxing match in live time. That was a real blast here. But Jeff Whitfield with another super chat. Thank you so much, Jeff. Jeff saying BPA at pick 3 while in need of a quarterback could land us picking 10 to 15 next year. We're in range for need, and now if he falls, blow it on BPA, and the BPA will be on the Eagles in 5 years with no QB of the future. That is the argument when you have an opportunity to swing. Maybe you take the swing on the quarterback. Obviously, that ties into the debate that we just had, so we can't dive too deeply back into this one. But listen, I understand the logic here. And again, I will say the other half of this, I was playing devil's advocate here for taking the quarterback at 3 because the Giants have an opportunity to. But it is me on this channel. I'm the one who brought up the Chiefs model that I keep bringing up first and foremost. And I think that is the proper way to go about this. You keep building out this roster. You might be picking 10 to 15 next year. I think the Chiefs were picking 23 the year that they drafted Mahomes. They traded into 10. You could do that next year. That's absolutely the way that the top quarterbacks were acquired, whether you're talking Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Matt Stafford was acquired by a trade like most of the quarterbacks are acquired. Lamar Jackson by trading up in the first round. So I think there's many different ways to slice this apple is another term that I like to say. But yeah, I think that it can go right, it can go wrong. And we just can't really trust the Giants to get it right or wrong here because they're such a wild card.
Yeah, listen, the truth is if the Giants are picking 10 or 15, I appreciate the super chat, Jeff. I think that Sanders is in the range of a normal draft class with a couple quarterbacks is in the 10 to 20 range. So if the Giants are in the 10 to 20 range next year, they end up with a quarterback I have pretty much ranked in that range anyway this year. That's how I personally feel about it. And you could always trade up if you feel like you have Hunter, you have a good defense, you still have your draft capital, you could trade up and try to get that quarterback that you want. I'm willing to take that risk right now because I don't have that much conviction in Sanders. And that's him obviously getting a little heated before. Still appreciate your opinion nonetheless. And, I'm happy that we could have good discussion and whatnot. This is definitely a really good time. We're not splitting up. Obviously, we're having a really enjoyable time. We've done this many times, Anthony. I love to spar. It's always a blast. And it really is. We both get into it and heated about it, which is like what makes this podcast so much fun and these live streams so enjoyable. Is that like we're not afraid to like throw haymakers at each other and then walk away and exactly. have a nice conversation later. That's what it's all about, though. So I do think, looking at the situation right now, if you're drafting 10 to 15 next year, I do think that Sanders is in that range anyway in a normal draft class. So I'm okay with that result, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'll repeat your point. I love the fact that we are able to have these arguments / debates here on the channel. It's what makes it so much fun. There's like zero bad blood. In fact, this is like what we enjoy to do with one another is have these debates, which is what makes this show so much fun and so enjoyable for you all. So last super chat here that we're going to get through, and then we do have to wrap it. Went way overtime because of Alex and I's near 20-minute debate about Shedeur Sanders. Always Shedeur Sanders who creates these debates. It's always the quarterback. But regardless, Razor Shockwave here, cool name and great super chat. Thank you so much for it. Saying, guys, I like Hunter or Carter at 3, but I'm liking Milroe more and more at 34 or 65. If you take him at 34, then I trade to 32, get an extra year. He has amazing talent. Go Big Blue. I do agree with you. If you're going to take a quarterback in round 2 at 34, you might as well just trade up the 3 to 5 spots to get into the first round and get that 5th-year option. I do think that's crucial. What I will say about Jalen Milroe specifically is this. I no longer think he's an option at 65. I think he's a possibility at 34. However, the fact that he accepted an invitation to the NFL draft indicates a team inside the first round told him they have a first-round grade on him and they will take him there. Or it could be the teams told him he has a very high second-round grade and they're willing to trade into the back end of the first round, as you're suggesting here, to get him with that 5th-year option. So there's a very good chance that Milroe does become a first-round draft pick. So I think that he's more of an option 34. I think you can cross him off the list with 65. Stranger things have happened for sure, but I do think BPA at 3 is absolutely a great move. But if you're talking Milroe, you're probably talking Milroe at 34 or trade up into the back end of the first round to get him there.
Yeah, I don't know where he's going to go. And, just to address this comment before, so I feel like we can fix Dart, Alex, but not Sanders. I'm talking about getting Dart in the back end of the first round, where Sanders is also reasonable, in my opinion, in the 20 range. So, I just don't want to take a chance on a guy that needs a lot of work, in my opinion. However, with that being said, to address Razor Shockwave's super chat, very, very generous. I'm with you. Get Hunter Carter at 3. Milroe is interesting. He has an elite trait. He's one of the best running quarterbacks on day one right now. If you put him in the NFL, you're talking about a guy that's in the same breath as Jaden Daniels, in the same breath as Jalen Hurts, in the same breath as Lamar Jackson as a runner. And you just let Brian Daboll work with him behind the scenes. He needs a lot of work on the short to intermediate stuff, but the deep ball is certainly intriguing. He's got some talent. Let him sit, let him learn. Maybe you build it that way. I think he's probably going to go more towards the back end of the second round, if we're being honest, but that's just how I feel at this moment in time.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same way. And listen, I love the idea of BPA and then a quarterback to supplement, as a developmental piece. It might make more sense kind of adding into what Alex was saying. If you're not playing this rookie quarterback this year, maybe you're better off passing on Sanders and taking a different quarterback that you can afford more time to sit and grow with. We do have a few comments referencing my Napoli jersey right now. Forza Napoli Sempre. We have a huge match today at 2:45 p.m. I cannot wait for it. Versus, I believe we're playing Bologna today. Chasing Inter Milan for the Scudetto right now. We are 4 points behind. Need a crucial 3 points today. So that's what I'm looking forward to and hoping for. So shout out to everybody who recognized the jersey and who likes it. Forza Napoli Sempre. But we're going to have to wrap this one up now. Alex, this was a great one. This was a fun one. This was a feisty one, I think we could call it. Another fantastic live stream here on Fireside Giants. Alex, we have 636 live viewers on Twitter/X and another 373 here on YouTube. We appreciate all over 1,000 of you who just tuned into this live stream. Thank you so much. You can anticipate there will be another live stream tomorrow and in the coming days. We love doing these now basically daily, and we're going to keep them coming for you guys. We know that you appreciate them, and we appreciate all of you tuning in. Make sure to smash the like button if you haven't already. Make sure you're subscribing if you're new, ringing the bell so you don't miss a future live stream. And make sure if you're watching the live stream or replay, you leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. And hey, we also post these live streams as audio format on Apple and Spotify. If you're listening there, leave us a 5-star review and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants, which it seems many of you are since we have so many viewers in here from Twitter/X right now. So once again, thank you all so much for tuning in. We will catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants and Napoli.